What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. This case is one of the most, if not the most known missing persons case in the world, to this date. There are so many theories and so many people just talk about this case all the time because it's just still unsolved and there's no real evidence or any new leads still, and it's been 12 years. So it's such a huge case. And yeah, so let's just jump right in. I just want to give a quick disclaimer as well that this video is for awareness and educational purposes only. I don't mean to offend anyone that I talk about in this video or anyone that's involved with the case, and that my respects do go out to everyone that was affected. Madeleine was born on the 12th of May 2003 in Leicester, I don't know if I'm saying that right, England, to Jerry and Kate McCann. Maddie also had two younger twins, actually, twin siblings, and their names were Emily and Sean. So Maddie came from quite a wealthy background. Both of her parents were actually doctors, and they had decided to book a family holiday to quite a known British tourist destination in Portugal. They decided to go on a holiday to Praia da Luz, Portugal, and they actually had a lot of friends who were also on holiday there with their kids who were also doctors. So they flew into Portugal on April 28th, 2007, where they would be staying at a ocean club resort in Praia da Luz. Praia da Luz. I hope I'm saying that right. And this resort actually had an ocean club for kids where it was kind of like a creche where the parents could go and drop their children off overnight time during the day while they could go out and do other activities. The creche also held activities for the kids when they would be dropped off there. They would go sailing out on the ocean. As the kids were quite young, Maddie was only 3 at this time and her younger twin siblings were only 2 years old. Often they would fall asleep quite quickly because, you know, they've been out doing things all day. They've been out at the beach, out the ocean, sailing, all those activities that they had been doing were obviously quite tiring activities. So the kids would often fall asleep quite quickly. After the kids would fall asleep, the parents would go across the pool where they would find a tapas restaurant, and they would go to this tapas restaurant quite regularly for dinner, drinks, that kind of thing. And this is where the name the Tapas 7 came from, which were the 7 other friends that the McCanns were dining with. Most resources said that the restaurant was only 120 meters away from the apartment 5A, but some say 80 meters, some say 70, so I don't know, I couldn't really find something that was reliable. I'm just going to go with 120 meters because that seems the most realistic. There was a big pool in between with a road on the side, and the McCanns were staying in apartment 5A, which actually it was kind of on the street side. It wasn't like it had apartments either side of it. It just had a road right next to it and then obviously an apartment on the other side. So on the 3rd of May 2007, just 5 days into their luxury holiday, the McCanns did what they were doing every other night, and they put the kids to bed through reading them a bedtime story and then went off to the tapas restaurant with the rest of their friends. Whilst this group of friends were at dinner, they would take turns checking on their children. The other couples also had their children in their apartments sleeping as well. The McCanns were said to have left for the restaurant at around 8:30 p.m. At around 9:05 p.m, Jerry goes to check on his children. He actually went through the back door, which they had left open. They locked the front door and used the back patio door to get in and out of their apartment, I guess ease of access. At around 9:25, Matt Oldfield, which was one of the friends that was staying with the McCanns, he offered to go check on the McCann's children, as he was actually going to check on his own and Kate was going to go check on her kids, but he offered to check on hers as well. Matt said that he entered the apartment and didn't hear any commotion, didn't hear any kids crying. He could see the twins asleep in their bed, but he didn't actually open the door far enough to see if Maddie was also asleep in her bed. He did hear one of the twins or one of the kids turning over in their bed, the noise of it, so I guess he just assumed they were all just sleeping still and that everything was fine. And then at around 10 p.m, Kate goes to check on her children. When she goes to the room, she notices that there's more light in the room than what she remembered from before. She also notices the door slamming, and that obviously tells her that there's a window open in the room due to like the air pressure. That's often why doors slam shut. So she goes to check, and that's when she notices the back window open, and she also notices that Madeleine isn't in her bed. Now immediately Kate runs out of the room, runs back to the restaurant, leaving her two twins in the room still by themselves, which I kind of found a bit strange. She goes running back to the restaurant, and she's just screaming, you know, someone's taken Maddie, someone's taken Maddie. And that was her immediate response. Immediately, everyone from the resort, all the friends that were staying with the McCanns, everyone that was alerted or, you know, heard Kate screaming, immediately comes out to see what all the commotion is about. Everyone from that point onwards, from 10 p.m. up until the early hours of the morning, were checking the nearby streets, were checking the beach, were checking behind bushes, in bins, obviously in case they came across a body. Everyone began searching, and obviously the police started to get involved. From that moment onwards, because Kate came out making such a fuss, everyone started, I guess, contaminating the crime scene. They were walking through the room, walking around the apartment, checking to see if they could notice anything. But in doing that contaminated any chance the police had of finding specific DNA or, you know, footprints. What's also really disappointing about this case is that because it was in Portugal, the Portugal police force wasn't the greatest. There wasn't like a great deal of authority in the area at the time, and it actually took the police quite a while to start investigating. But even though people were searching for days on end, they couldn't find anything. There was no trace, there was no, you know, clothing left behind, there was no DNA left behind, there was nothing. They didn't find anything. There are a few witness reports, and that's pretty much all they have to work with still to this day. There's not ever been anything found. So one of the witness reports was from Jane Tanner, which was one of the friends that was staying with the McCanns at the time. At around 9:15, Jane Tanner went to go check on her children, and that's when she noticed Jerry talking to one of his friends, Jeremy, across the road from the apartment. And a little further up on the corner of the road, just up from the apartment, she saw a man carrying a little girl wearing pink pajamas. The little girl was also blonde, and he was kind of scurrying across the road in like some sort of hurry. There was also another report that an Irish family had seen a man carrying a little girl in pink pajamas with blonde hair, also in a hurry down the street. Jerry doesn't recall ever seeing Jane coming, you know, up to the apartment. He doesn't ever recall seeing her walk past. So a lot of people do think that Jane just made up this witness story to, I guess, fit what the parents think happened to Madeleine. What's also really interesting is that the cadaver dogs that the police used, they're specifically trained to pick up scents of like human remains and like just death, blood, tissue, anything to do with finding the remains of a human body. And they actually picked up scents behind the bed and in the boot of the McCann's rental car. The previous day, Madeleine said, "Mummy, why didn't you come check on Sean and I when we were crying?" She also had a big brown stain on her pajama shirt. This is like something that could be taken really literally, or just like, I mean, she's a 3-year-old, so she could have just said, "Why didn't you come?" Like, she could have just woken up from a dream. Many people obviously think that the McCanns had something to do with this. They believe that they actually either murdered her or did something with her. And there's a few, I guess, theories for this. The first thing is that obviously the cadaver dogs picked up a scent in the boot of their car. And why would they pick up a scent there if there was never a body placed into the boot of a car? And often when you're trying to hide or dispose of a body, you're going to put it in, I guess, the boot of your car. You're not going to put it in the front seat. Another thing is that because they were doctors, a lot of people believe that they had actually drugged the kids. It's not super uncommon for parents to give kids, you know, like a nighttime Panadol to just help them go to sleep a little bit easier and to take the edge off. So it's believed that they could have accidentally overdosed Maddie and evidently killed her. And because they were doctors, and they obviously didn't want to go to jail, because they were doctors, they didn't want to ruin that reputation, and so they disposed of her body. Another thing that supports this is that they were acting super strange in interviews. They were, every time they would go in front of the media, in front of cameras, they wouldn't really show a lot of emotion, which, I mean, it's so hard to say, like, that people are acting sus in front of the media, in front of cameras, because everyone, and I know people say this all the time, but it's so true, like, everyone handles grief differently, and if your child has gone missing, you don't know how you're going to react, you don't know that you're going to be super, super emotional and crying, because you could just be overwhelmed, like, you could just be completely puzzled and completely confused. Maybe they're in denial, maybe they think that she's just really close by, that they're going to find her in a few days. But it's really hard to kind of judge parents on how they act in front of the media. Obviously, if they were like laughing and cracking jokes and stuff, that's completely different. But if they're just not really saying much, they're kind of quiet, they're not really crying, but they're not really like smiling or anything, they're just kind of blank. It's kind of, in my opinion, hard to, interpret how they would be feeling. It has received so much publicity and so much media attention that it has, like, it's just would have made so much money as a case. And like the McCanns have set up a foundation as well, like a charity that people can donate to. So there's a lot of money involved, which means like maybe they were doing this whole thing for money, maybe they needed the money. But in saying that, they've also spent a lot of money, investing in their charity and trying to find Madeleine. So it doesn't really make sense that they would be doing it for money if they're going and spending all the money again. There's also been reports that 2 men were seen visiting the apartment earlier that day, actually looking for donation money for a charity. And maybe they saw Maddie, maybe they wanted to take her for like money or an opportunity in order for them to raise money for their own charity. Kate also said that she made a note on the booking that she would be leaving her children in the room of a nighttime while she went and dined at the tapas restaurant. So it's also highly likely that an employee at the Ocean Club Beach Resort they were staying at saw this and saw an opportunity. Like maybe it was one of the maids, maybe it was, I don't know, a reception staff, maybe it was a landscaper, maybe it was just someone that was casually working at the resort at the time. There's also the theory that one of the Tapas 7, so one of the members of their friendship group, actually did something with Madeleine. This is also possible because, they were staying in apartments right next to each other. They were also offering to go and check on their kids of a nighttime. They knew the McCann's routine and they knew ways in which they could do this. This doesn't really make sense though, because there's no real motive for them to want to do it unless it just came down to like jealousy or money or something. But yeah, there's nothing that really, I guess, gives this any sort of motive. And there's also the theory that is pretty much the most publicized, is that a complete stranger took Maddie. The British were known to holiday in this area, so it's highly likely that someone was either stalking them or, watched what they were doing and knew their routine, knew that they were going to be at the tapas restaurant that night and took advantage of that and went in and took Maddie. It's also highly likely that they just, were walking up the street and noticed that the door was open and so went in. But it did say that the door wasn't actually visible from the street, or maybe it wasn't visible from the restaurant. I think it was both. It was open, but you couldn't see that it was open. It really wouldn't be difficult, if you were walking down the street the previous day and you saw Maddie and she looked like a girl that you wanted to abduct, you could easily just follow their routine and follow what they were doing. They were going to the tapas restaurant every night, so, it's not hard to notice that they had a routine in place. And if you watched really carefully, you'd also notice that they had like a half an hour gap in between checking the children. And I mean, half an hour is a long time for someone to come in, take their child and walk away. Like, it's not like it's 5 or 10 minutes. Half an hour is a long period of time to be able to get away with something like this. And if the parents had drugged their kids and, knocked them out and made them sleep a lot better, it would make sense that if a stranger picked Maddie up and started walking away with her, that she wouldn't wake up. She would be in such a deep sleep from the drugs that, you know, someone could just walk away with her asleep in their arms. And if someone did actually abduct her, it is highly likely that she was abducted to be sold into sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is such a big industry. Like, so many people get put in and exploited to sex trafficking each year. I think the statistics are like 50% of children, and they can range from like 1 to 25 usually. So that's pretty much it for the theories, for the evidence, for the case in general. This one is so tough, and that's probably why it's so publicized and so, you know, you just see a lot about it. You know, there's a new Netflix documentary series about it. So if you haven't seen that, you can go watch that. That pretty much, they kind of sprawl it out over a long period of time, even though there's not a whole lot of information regarding it. And what's also interesting is that the McCann family also refused to be involved with that documentary, which, I don't know, it's quite interesting. They said that they think that it might hinder the investigation, and that they've already got their own detectives working on the case that have proper information. Yeah, the McCanns have actually hired private detectives to work on the case. They've pretty much cut off like the police from Portugal. There's no evidence to suggest that Maddie is dead, but there's also no evidence to suggest that she's alive. So it's really hard to come up with some sort of theory. Like, there's part of me that believes that the McCanns did have something to do with it, just because Kate immediately said, and she was adamant, that someone took Maddie as soon as she saw that Maddie wasn't in her bed. Like, what if Maddie wandered off into the street and someone saw an opportunity and took her there? Maybe someone didn't walk into the apartment and took her. Maybe someone saw her lost and confused. She woke up from her sleep and was looking for her mum and dad, and walked out the door and just got lost, and that was that. How do you know that someone has taken her? Why would that be your first instinct, that someone has abducted your child, rather than where is she, has she wandered off? Obviously, just the lack of responsibility as well. You know, they left their 3-year-old and 2-year-olds in a room in a foreign place by themselves. Like, regardless if they were sleeping or not, the back door was open, the road was right there, it's not secure, and they're 3 and 2. I know for a fact that my mum would never let me, as a 3-year-old, like, alone, away from me, regardless of whether the tapas restaurant, you know, you could see the apartment from the restaurant. You couldn't see the door or the window. I just think that that's really irresponsible parenting on their part. I know that they've come forth and said, you know, we've made the biggest mistake and we're living with it every day for the rest of our lives. But as parents, just such a bad move, like such a poor parenting move. Jerry actually came forth on the media and said that, you know, when you put your kids to bed upstairs and you're doing something downstairs, you're not right near them. But I feel like that's different, because you're in your own house. You have like a secure environment. You know, you usually lock your doors over night time. You know the ins and outs of your house. Whereas this is like an apartment where you just don't know. You really just don't know. So that's pretty much it for this case, guys. Maddie would be 15 years old if she's out there, if she's still alive. I just hope that she is somewhat safe. I really do believe that one day this case will be solved. There's so many technological advances in DNA coming, and yeah, I just think that one day this case will finally come to an end. Whether it's 20 years from now or 30 years from now, I just have a feeling that one day they're going to find the answers that we've all been wondering for so long. And there's actually been new photos released of an age progression of Maddie, so I mean, wherever you are in the world, if you do see someone that may look like Maddie today, definitely speak up, definitely say something. So that's it from me today, guys. Such a huge case, so mind-boggling because we really just don't know what happened. So that's it for today's video, guys. I really hope you stay safe wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.